Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged and honored today to hear from an internationally acclaimed and brilliantly successful entrepreneur, a highly sought-after speaker. Our esteemed commencement speaker, Professor Robin Chase, is specifically a transportation entrepreneur. She is the co-founder and former CEO of Zipcar, the world's leading car-sharing network, as well as the co-founder of Numo, an alliance organization that leverages tech-based disruption in the transport sector to create sustainable and just mobility. She is the author of Peers Inc., How People and Platforms Are Inventing the Collaborative Economy and Reinventing Capitalism. Robin is the chair of the public company Two Cows and serves on the advisory board of the WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. In the past, she served on the boards of, among many others, the World Resources Institute, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, the French National Digital Agency, the National Advisory Council for Innovation and Entrepreneurship for the U.S. Department of Commerce, and the OECD's International Transport Forum Advisory Board. Professor Robin Chase lectures widely and has received many awards, including the prestigious Urban Land Institute's Urban Visionary Prize, Time 100 Most Influential People, Fast Company Fast 50 Innovators, and Business Week Top 10 Designers. Our commencement speaker graduated from Wellesley College and MIT's Sloan School of Management. She was a Harvard University Loeb Fellow and received an honorary doctorate of design from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, our commencement speaker, Professor Robin Chase.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so delighted to be here. Let me put my glasses on, and we begin. I'm sorry that I'm reading this, but it was very important what I had to say to you because you're very important people. Can you believe you are here? Look around. You've made it. Take a thoughtful breath. Listen to the sounds. Take a moment and store deep in your mind all the senses so you can find it again, so you can celebrate your achievement over and over again. Today, my theme is change. Our lives are change. Is this too echoing for you? Our lives are change. Think about where you were 10 years ago and where you want to be in 10 more. The world is change, whether or not we participate. But with thoughtful action and clear goals, we can guide this change. We can evolve from where we are today to where we want to go. From here, where the efficiency of capitalism pushes for extractive practices while being unconcerned with non-monetizable intangibles, be they positive or negative, and where technical tools are being created, deployed, and disseminated at breathtaking speeds that don't allow much time for learning. To a world where we remember that we as individuals and we as humans are inextricably tied together to each other, other species, and other living things. We are metaphorically and literally all in this together. The Earth's health is our health. My generation experienced an acceleration of change, and your generation is wholly enmeshed in it. I'd like to start with some audience participation. You need some waking up. No. Okay, I'm going to ask you to vote on one of two options. Being forced to choose among two options is not true to life, but it's simplifying and focusing. So first I'm going to ask the question, and then we will vote. So here's the question. Do you think existing companies and existing governments will evolve fast enough to address climate change and income inequalities, or will they move too slowly and the people will rise up in revolt? A very provocative question. So, we're going to do this anonymously. Everyone close your eyes. Close your eyes. I see some eyes open, all closed, including on the stage. Close your eyes. Raise your hand if you think the future is one of evolution. Put down your hands. Raise your hands if you think the future is one of revolution. Put down your hands. Open your eyes. I actually did you a favor today. I normally unanonymize this. But the vote is about 60% revolution, 40% evolution. And I've posed this question to diverse audiences worldwide, from students to CEOs, innovators, and policymakers. Typically, 70 to 80% raise their hands for revolution, which is shocking. Of course, the binary choice isn't the way our world works, and our stereotypes of revolutions is that they're 30 years of suffering, chaos, and death, and no one wants that. But we also feel deep inside us that status quo patterns, infrastructure, regulations, and economies are not working anymore. There's an increasing gap between outcomes driven by current economic forces and what is needed to sustain a thriving society. We might not have been able to verbalize these thoughts, but this dissonance lies within us, and we have really been feeling this. So we need to be revolutionary evolutionists. We need to incite peaceful revolutions and accelerate the pace of change and collaboration with others. And so how do we speed the pace of change given existing realities? That is the rest of this talk and how I think about this. And so that you can anticipate how long I'm going to be talking. There are 9 points, which is a lot, I'm sorry, but okay. Number 1, infrastructure is destiny. In every company I've founded, the status quo was the biggest barrier to success. And I give my husband credit for this thought, and I use it all the time. Infrastructure is destiny. 70 years ago in the US, we built housing out in the cheap hinterlands, and then we had to build a highway to connect them. And these infrastructure choices necessarily delivered the congestion, the poor health, the traffic deaths, and the inequality defined by lack of car access that we face today. Infrastructure is destiny. Infrastructure's role is to make some things really easy and convenient. It offers the path of least resistance. Think broadly about infrastructure. Yes, roads, bridges, public transport, rail systems, airports, and internet connections. But it is also tax laws and regulations that encourage us or discourage us to invest in certain ways or to live in certain places. We might also imagine mainstream cultural and religious norms as infrastructure that provide easy-to-adopt hopes and dreams. The infrastructure we built in the past has delivered us to this chaotic, unhealthy, and unequal place in which we live today. And the infrastructure we build right now and tomorrow will shape our future and our destiny. So be alert and be thoughtful. Number 2, a stepwise plan. Usually, change happens incrementally. And friends and colleagues who know me will laugh that I say this because I'm well known for coming up with big and not incremental ideas. When I think about the future, about the one that I dream about, I have this lovely, fully formed, fully executed, wildly successful image in my mind. And the same is true of when I conceive of a new company, and the same is true when I talk to other entrepreneurs about their ideas. We are eager and excited. We don't focus on whether the idea is solid, whether we are the right person to do it, whether this is the time or this is the right location. Yet somehow we must ground ourselves in this reality while we stretch to reach these goals. As change makers, we need to hold the utopian idea in our minds and be able to describe it while we focus our steps in the here with this built environment, these roads, these buildings, these laws, these regulations, this technology, these cultural norms. Once we accomplish these first steps, we move to the next steps. And it well may be, and in fact is quite likely, that our initial dream will start morphing and evolving as we move forward. So we have this idea way out there, and we are here, and think about the step that goes from here up, these first steps. So 3, find your own strengths and recognize your weaknesses. As you begin your journey, build on your strengths. Over the years, I've come to believe that everyone is exactly the right person for some job. You will all prove to be uniquely right to do something valuable, to innovate, build a company, lead a community, be the person relied upon or who gives succor. Each one of us with our own very particular life experiences, the failures, the successes, the scars, and the skills, will prove to be the right fit for something. If you find yourself in a place where you aren't valued, move on. Plant yourself where you will thrive. It turns out that I was the right person with the right experiences, skills, locations, and timing to build and execute on Zipcar. I grew up in 10 countries and attended 15 different schools from kindergarten through university. This left some gaps in my education, especially in basic math, multiplication, fractions, algebra. At Sloan, they offered finance and baby finance, and there was no way I was going to do baby finance. But I struggled. I failed the first exam and barely passed the second. Problem sets were daunting, requiring skills I absolutely did not have. I tackled them step by step, using brute persistence until the concepts clicked. By the end of the semester, I not only understood the material, but I also got the highest score in the final exam. This experience became a lifelong touchstone, reminding me that with determination, I could master things I set my mind to. So pay attention, and with some humility and honesty, to your own strengths. Know them and rely on them. As a child and as an adult, I was always trying to figure out what I was good at. And it wasn't until my 40s that I began to get some inklings. And now at 65, I might be able to name a few things that I might be good at with some uncertainty and many caveats. So it'll take a while, but try to figure this out. So I was the right person to build Zipcar because I live in a dense urban area with 3 children and 1 car, and my spouse used that car to commute. I lived a multimodal urban life since birth. I had recently attended a business school reunion where classmates were launching startups. It was in my mind. I lived in Boston, a hub for venture capital and tech companies. My husband was an electrical engineer. The internet was burgeoning and wireless technology was a buzzword. I rarely drove, knew nothing about cars, and wasn't daunted by operational challenges or learning new things. Hadn't I mastered finance in business school? I was also very good at thinking about how people actually use things and communicating ideas in simple, clear ways. These last 2 skills I didn't realize yet that I possessed. I often joke with my children. In some circles, I'm very well known. You know the Venn diagrams where they have many overlapping circles and they intersect in this little spot? That's where I'm famous. My sweet spot is at the intersection of innovation, cities, transportation, technology, and climate change. And I consider myself a transportation entrepreneur and a futurist in those locations. So Zipcar, my most successful company, was launched in 2000. We were the first example of using wireless technology to enable people to find, reserve, and unlock cars parked throughout a city and rent them by the hour and by the day. We were the first to leverage technology to transform a mainstream sharing economy service. We were the first to build a useful Internet of Things, our cars. And because people didn't need to own their own car, but can use a shared fleet, Zipcar dramatically drives down the number of cars needed to be manufactured and stored on city streets. The service also reduces the number of trips people choose to take by private car, and the result is significantly reduced CO2 emissions associated with personal travel. We were very early in the quest to build what we need now, companies that improve the quality of life while reducing environmental impact. 4, success comes from the efforts of many. This is an important part of my story. While figuring out your strengths and recognizing your weaknesses, seek out those who can fill your gaps. Coordination and collaboration is power. I definitely didn't know anything about cars. I hired a senior person from Hertz Car Rental to be my chief operating officer. I knew nothing about wireless technology or software for consumer use at scale or in-vehicle hardware. I hired my husband to be our chief technology officer. As time progressed, I hired people to talk with customers, to install, clean, and maintain the cars, and others thought up and executed on outreach, flyers, table events. For the first 2 years, Zipcar grew month over month, won lots of awards, earned the affection and praise of our members, and I would tell staff, we built this together. It took the consistent quality and skill of every single person to produce this service, and it's true. Every customer touch point has to work well and go smoothly. Every single one of those people mattered. Before we launched, when I was running around and talking to everyone and trying to get a handle on what it would take to build this, I was also really appreciative of the role of government in society. I was constantly noting how lucky I was to be doing this in Boston, Massachusetts, rather than one of the countries I had grown up in. In Boston, we had roads in relatively good repair, drivers with driver's licenses, and records that we could inspect, a well-developed insurance industry. We had government officials, angel investors, and venture capitalists who I could reach out to with a telephone system that worked, a postal service I could rely on, and a growing internet. 10 years after founding, Zipcar went public and became part of the US Stock Exchange. My successor was leading the company then. There's a tradition that the company founder rings the opening bell on the trading floor. I didn't get to ring that bell. My successor, who carried the company forward with the same service and the same business model I had created, molded, and established, believed he had built the company and that its success was due to him alone. He didn't appreciate that the efforts of those who went before and beside him. And so I know that every one of you have had moments of working really, really hard, thinking hard, being frustrated, pushing through, having breakthroughs, personal and shared successes, being exhausted, and then rising to meet the next challenge, the next deadline, the next piece of work. Be proud of yourself. But remember, your successes were not achieved in a vacuum. So I started today by encouraging you to remember and relish this moment. Now I'd like you to look back over the last 20 years, over your whole childhood, and appreciate the efforts of others who helped make this graduation happen for you. Who financed your education from age 5 on? Who got you to school every day? Who made sure you were fed and had suitable clothing? Who brought you joy and fun? Who encouraged you to find your strengths? Who taught you lessons you didn't want to learn? Who pushed you when you were unmotivated? See those people and those faces and places and appreciate that together you got to this space today. We are stronger in community. We are resilient in community. Our skills and life experiences are interlocking and interreliant. We don't act alone. We are part of a much larger system. Our talents are married with and supported by the talents and efforts of others. Nothing we achieve is done alone. 6, a hacker's mind. In order for startups to succeed, they need to adopt a hacker's mind. A friend of mine, Bruce Schneier, who wrote a book on this title, he defined hacking as a system in which he defined hacking as using a system in a way in which the creator did not anticipate. Because I believe that infrastructure is destiny, that our past foundations inexorably push us in a very specific, well-worn directions, and that it takes years to change infrastructure built out of cement or government policy or cultural norms. And yet we are in very urgent times to address climate change and inequality with speed. So instead of being discouraged, I focus myself on how can we hack the system? How can we encourage change and make change without having to reinvent the whole system? And then, once we have a critical mass of adoption, we can codify these new ways of doing things into new policy and new infrastructure, and it's much easier. 7, be prepared. Be prepared for action when given the opportunity. This gives you speed. I tell a story about how I bucked early marketing advice and chose back in 2000 to put a large logo on the passenger side door of our cars and our tagline, "Wheels when you want them," on the trunk. Advisors said, "People will feel like they're driving a pizza delivery truck." And I would say, no, people are going to feel pride with driving with this logo because it is signaling that they are financially smart and an urban insider and very cool. And to that end, I made sure that our first cars were flashy, sweet, lime green icons, the first of Volkswagen's relaunch of the Beatles. 3 weeks into our single beta car being driven around by members, I got a phone call from an Associated Press reporter who said that he had seen one of our cars and wanted to do a story. And I laughed, and I said, which one might he have seen? His article instigated press, radio, and television coverage around the world. When I used to tell this story, I'd conclude by saying, we were so lucky. And then a colleague took me to the side and said, Robin, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And we had specifically chosen highly visible cars, and I had specifically chosen to put a logo on them. 8, ground yourself in facts, choose truth. I think of this as the long game, and it is reputation preserving. We succeeded with Zipcar because we were on the front edge of large trends towards urbanization and people living in more densely populated areas. We were grounded in the fundamental and specific economic reality that cars are wildly underused. They're idle about 95% of the time. And it's also one of the most expensive things that people buy. Yet we were able to give people, let them pay for it by the hour and by the day, so we were providing a cheaper option. We were writing new technologies that hadn't yet been exploited. We applied wireless and the internet in novel ways and building a platform for user participation and collaboration long before others did, bringing our transaction costs close to zero. So while we executed beautifully, We also rode major trends and where our timing was really good. So when Jeff Bezos, the first person to understand the potential of the internet to people easily find and build small things, and Mark Zuckerberg, who was early in the invention of social media, while these two men were surely skilled, they were also lucky. And their timing was on the front end of trends, and they had the collaboration of others. So you are living in the age of ubiquitous, democratized communications and cheap big data. Everyone has a cell phone. AI is newly unleashed, and how it might be fruitfully and compellingly applied is still unknown. You're also living together with 8 billion people on a very discrete planet. Extractive business practices and dismissed negative externalities are now fully entrenched economic practices in our late-stage capitalism, and these failures are killing us. Capitalism fails to take into account valuable and yet unmonetized intangibles, like the value of taking care of children and the elderly, the value of local culture, the value of natural ecosystems. This failed accounting has to be displaced with a new economic logic, and you get to be the ones to do that. 9, the power of narrative. I've been telling you all sorts of stories, and sometimes conflicting ones. Storytelling will be the bread and butter of everything you do. How do I make this effort make sense? How do I make people relate to it? How do I get them to follow? How do I get them to internalize and believe in this? This is the power that culture and media has, and one that facts and logic frustratingly fail on. Emotions win. Use the power of storytelling, and yes, even magical thinking, to keep making headway. But keep reality and facts in your own mind so that you can stay focused and keep your eyes on that prize. So to conclude, when I founded Zipcar, many people told me that the idea would never work, that no one would want to share a car, that people would treat the cars poorly or steal them, and I disagreed. I built this company based on the world I believed in, one where most people are good and you can trust them. We use technology to make sharing a car as easy and convenient as owning your own. We also use technology to make it hard to steal and fines to shape behavior. We told stories of convenience, flexibility, and fun trips. The result is that each Zipcar replaces 13 private cars, which don't have to be manufactured or stored on city streets in expensive parking garages. And users' transportation carbon emissions are a small fraction of what they would have been had they owned their own car. So Zipcar reduced overall consumption, encouraged shared consumption, and raised quality of life for all. Create the world you want to live in. Create the world we can live in. Every day, we are building the infrastructure that becomes our destiny. So be thoughtful, be collaborative, be joyful when you can, and this is a day to be joyful. Thank you.